My parents tried to hijack my wedding venue for my sister's baby shower, so I made sure they'd regret it. I'm 28. I never thought I'd be writing about uninviting my own parents from my wedding, but life has a way of surprising you. Looking back, I should have seen the signs of their favoritism toward my younger sister Grace earlier, but I guess I was too focused on seeing the best in them. The small stuff, letting her skip chores, excusing her constant tardiness at family dinners, seemed insignificant at the time. It wasn't until my wedding planning that I realized just how deep their bias ran. I proposed to Julia last year after 3 amazing years together. She's the kind of person who lights up a room just by walking into it, and I knew from our first date that she was special. We decided on a practical 10-month engagement, enough time to plan everything without dragging it out too long. The venue search was surprisingly easy. We found this charming local place with a beautiful garden for the ceremony and an intimate indoor hall for the reception. It wasn't the biggest or most expensive venue in town, but it was perfect for us. The moment we walked in, Julia's face lit up in a way that told me this was it. The gardens were immaculately maintained, with winding paths through flowering shrubs and a small fountain that created the perfect backdrop for photos. The indoor space had these gorgeous exposed wooden beams and large windows that let in natural light. It was exactly what we wanted. We put down the deposit 8 months before the wedding date, using money we'd saved together. My father was there when we signed the contract, smiling and congratulating us. My mother's response was more subdued, just a polite nod, but I didn't think much of it at the time. Grace's reaction was cold, but that was typical of her. Then Grace dropped her bombshell. She was pregnant. She'd only been dating her boyfriend for a few months, but suddenly everything revolved around her impending motherhood. My parents, especially my mother, went into full grandparent mode, showering her with attention and gifts. Still, I was happy for her, until that phone call that changed everything. I was at work when the venue manager called. Her voice was hesitant as she explained that my father had contacted them to cancel our reservation. My stomach dropped. I thought it must be a mistake. Why would my father cancel our venue without telling us? The manager, bless her heart, had the presence of mind to verify the cancellation with me since my name was on the contract. The confrontation with my father revealed the ugly truth. They decided Grace needed that specific venue for her baby shower, on our wedding date, no less. His justification made my blood boil. A baby shower trumps a wedding because a baby is the future of the family. As if my marriage meant nothing. What followed was a 3-week battle that I never expected to fight. My father had already put down a deposit for Grace's baby shower, thinking I'd just roll over and accept it. But he'd underestimated both me and the venue's integrity. The manager became an unexpected ally in this mess. She showed me the paper trail of my father's attempts to cancel our reservation, including emails where he claimed to speak on my behalf. I spent hours on the phone with the venue's legal team, establishing that only my fiancé and I had the authority to make changes to our contract. My father tried every trick in the book, claiming there had been a misunderstanding, suggesting I was mentally unstable and couldn't make decisions, even attempting to dispute our original deposit payment. Each time, the manager and her team stood firm. The turning point came when my father showed up at the venue in person, trying to convince them that I had verbally agreed to the change. The manager, who'd become increasingly frustrated with his tactics, had security escort him out. She later told me she'd never seen such determination to sabotage a wedding in her 15 years of event planning. After his initial attempt to cancel our venue failed, he launched what I can only describe as a psychological warfare campaign. First, he tried the financial angle. He called me at work one day, his voice dripping with false concern. "Son, I've been thinking about your future," he began. "Your mother and I have some savings set aside. We were going to give it to you as a wedding gift, but—" He let the sentence hang. The implication was clear. If I didn't give up the venue, I could forget about any financial help from them. When that didn't work, he switched to emotional manipulation. He dug up old family photos, sending them to me with captions about how close we used to be. He reminded me of times he'd supported me, helping me with homework, teaching me to ride a bike, attending my graduations. "I've always been there for you," he texted. "Now it's your turn to be there for your sister." Then came the guilt trips about my grandfather who had passed away years ago. "Your grandfather would be so disappointed," he said during one particularly heated phone call. "He always taught us that family comes first. You're betraying his memory by being so selfish." He conveniently forgot that Grandpa had also taught us about respect and keeping our word. He even contacted my best man, spinning a story about how I was having a mental breakdown and needed an intervention. He suggested my friends should convince me to take a step back and postpone the wedding. Thankfully, my best man saw through the manipulation and warned me immediately. The manipulation reached its peak when he showed up at our apartment late one night, clearly having had a few drinks. He oscillated between crying about how I was breaking my mother's heart and making veiled threats about my inheritance. "You're choosing a venue over your family," he slurred. "I hope you can live with that choice." Julia found us in the hallway and firmly told him to leave before she called the police. My sister's response was to wage a social media war, posting passive-aggressive updates about selfish siblings and the importance of family. She even started a GoFundMe for her dream baby shower, claiming I had stolen her perfect venue. The audacity was breathtaking. My mother's approach was more emotional. She left tearful voicemails about family tradition and the importance of supporting Grace during her pregnancy. "How can you be so cruel to your pregnant sister?" she wailed in one message. "This could stress her out and harm the baby." The manipulation was obvious, but it still hurt. The battle came to a head when my parents showed up at Julia's workplace. They thought they could convince her to be the voice of reason. Instead, they found themselves facing a united front. Julia, who'd remained remarkably composed throughout this chaos, finally let loose. She told them exactly what she thought of their behavior, their favoritism, and their attempts to ruin our wedding. Security had to escort them out as my mother screamed about ungrateful children and family loyalty. Through it all, my parents' true colors showed through. They believed that Grace's every whim should be catered to, regardless of who got hurt in the process. They couldn't understand why I wouldn't just give up my wedding venue for her baby shower. The fact that we'd already sent invitations and planned everything around this date meant nothing to them. The decision to uninvite them wasn't made lightly, but it was necessary. We hired extra security for the wedding day, providing them with photos of my family members. It felt surreal, having to protect our wedding from my own parents, but we weren't taking any chances. The wedding itself was beautiful, more perfect than we could have imagined. The gardens were in full bloom, the weather was ideal, and being surrounded by people who genuinely supported us made it even more special. Julia was radiant in her dress, and when she walked down the aisle, all the drama with my family faded away. This was what mattered: our love, our commitment, our future together. During the reception, my phone buzzed with notifications. Grace was hosting her baby shower at a community center, posting bitter updates about having to settle for a lesser venue. She even claimed I had deliberately sabotaged her plans out of jealousy over her pregnancy. My parents shared her posts, adding their own comments about ungrateful sons and family betrayal. I switched off my phone and focused on celebrating with our real family, the people who stood by us through this mess. Julia's parents, who had been horrified by my family's behavior, gave a beautiful toast about love, respect, and standing up for what's right. Our friends shared stories and laughter, and the dance floor stayed packed until late into the night. The aftermath has been both easier and harder than I expected. Easier because cutting contact with my family brought immediate peace to our lives. No more manipulation, no more guilt trips, no more walking on eggshells. Harder because the ripple effects spread through our extended family. Some relatives tried to play peacemaker, urging us to reconcile. Others took sides, creating awkward dynamics at family gatherings. Grace had her baby shower at the community center, which she apparently spent the entire time complaining about. She later sent me an invoice for the venue difference, claiming I owed her money for having to downgrade her plans. I filed it in the trash where it belonged. My parents' attempts at reconciliation have been half-hearted at best. They sent a letter after the wedding, ostensibly to apologize, but it was full of backhanded comments about family obligations and how I'd regret my decisions once Grace's baby was born. They included ultrasound photos, as if seeing their grandchild would suddenly make me forget their betrayal. The most recent development came when Grace had her baby. My parents launched a fresh campaign to reconcile, insisting that I needed to meet my nephew and make peace with the family. They sent flying monkeys, relatives, family friends, even my old high school teacher, to convince me I was being unreasonable. Each time I stood firm. Any relationship with them would require a genuine acknowledgement of their wrongdoing and a sincere apology. So far, that hasn't happened. Julia and I have built a beautiful life together. We're expecting our own baby now, and while there are moments when I wish things were different with my family, I don't regret standing up to them. That venue battle taught me an important lesson about boundaries and self-respect. Sometimes the price of peace is distance from the people who should have been closest to you. My sister still occasionally posts about how I ruined her baby shower plans, conveniently leaving out her and my parents' attempts to hijack our wedding venue. My parents play the role of wounded grandparents, lamenting their son's stubbornness while refusing to acknowledge their part in this rift. But I've learned to let it go. Their narrative doesn't change the truth, and I won't let their toxicity poison the life Julia and I have built. Looking back, that venue battle was about so much more than just a location for our wedding. It was about standing up to years of favoritism, manipulation, and entitlement. It was about choosing my own happiness over my family's unreasonable demands. Most importantly, it was about showing Julia that I would always put our relationship first, even when it meant making difficult choices. The venue where we got married has become a symbol of our resilience. We go back there sometimes, walking through those same gardens where we said our vows. Each visit reminds us that we made the right choice, not just about the venue, but about setting boundaries with my family. Our wedding day wasn't just the start of our marriage. It was the day we proved that together we could handle anything life throws our way. Some people might think cutting off family over a venue dispute is extreme, but it wasn't just about the venue. It was about respect, boundaries, and standing up for what's right. My parents and sister showed their true colors through their actions, and while the door isn't permanently closed, it will take much more than guilt trips and manipulation to open it again. For now, Julia and I focus on our future, on the family we're building together. We've learned that sometimes the best family isn't the one you're born into, but the one you choose to create. And while there's still occasional pain from the rift with my biological family, we know we made the right choice in standing our ground and protecting our special day from their toxic behavior.